The meal bar. It's an incredible invention. Seemingly infinite ingredient and nutritional combinations, has a long shelf life, it's portable and enjoyable anywhere, right from your pocket. So raise your hand if you have consumed a meal or a snack bar in the past month. So you are among the more than 45 million Americans who consume meal bars, and each of us need to decide on what to do with the 6 billion wrappers we discard each year. Meal bars are a fascinating subject in the field of packaging science because meal bars utilize almost every type of material available for packaging. So we're probably familiar with the plastic used in meal bar wrappers, and you may have noticed that some have a metal layer on the inside. And if the wrapper is clear, it can have a glass-like coating to extend its shelf life. And more recently, we're finding wrappers that use paper and other plant-based materials. So with the endless possibilities for crafting a meal bar, we face a similar challenge in deciding how to package it. However, this creates confusion for everybody involved. Businesses struggle to determine which of these wrappers are the most environmentally friendly, and as consumers, we often find ourselves confused ourselves, and that leads to improper disposal of the wrappers. So my graduate student, Rachel Hall, and I embarked on a multi-year investigation of meal bars, exploring their real environmental impacts and the public's perceptions of them. We analyzed dozens of meal bars on the market, and we calculated their environmental impacts by conducting a modified cradle-to-grave life cycle analysis. And that included measuring the raw material extraction of those wrappers, the production of the wrappers, and consumer disposal of the wrappers. And we excluded post-manufacturing transportation because transport distances vary significantly across manufacturers. We obtained our environmental data from the EcoInvent Lifecycle Inventory through Compass LCA. And we focused on carbon emissions because it's a familiar term, and 69% of U.S. consumers support taking steps towards carbon neutrality by 2050. We conducted a census-based survey with over 1,000 American meal bar consumers, and we presented them with 4 identical, equally priced meal bars, each in a different wrapper. About 80% of people initially selected meal bars with compostable packaging as the most environmentally friendly option, even though these options have the highest carbon emissions. Composting is a compelling idea. However, only 0.4% of the population actually reported of disposing of compostable packaging at a composting facility. After compostable materials, the next most commonly reported environmentally friendly meal bar was store drop-off recycling. However, only about 20% of the participants were even aware of store drop-off recycling, and among those 20% who were aware, only 13% considered it the most environmentally friendly option. The non-recyclable wrapper was perceived to be the least environmentally friendly meal bar, and interestingly, this option actually had the lowest carbon emissions. Carbon is a socially impactful metric. We asked the participants to rank the meal bars again, this time showing them the differences in carbon emissions. What the participants initially ranked as the most environmentally friendly meal bar quickly became the least environmentally friendly once they were presented with the carbon emissions data. So I want to visually illustrate the results of this experiment so you can see how carbon data influences our perceptions of environmental friendliness. Each dot represents a person's vote for the most environmentally friendly meal bar. When we first showed the 4 meal bars to consumers, most selected the compostable plastic option as the most environmentally friendly. That was followed by compostable paper, followed by store drop-off recycling, and the non-recyclable package came in as least environmentally friendly. Then we show the carbon emissions for each bar and ask the participants to rank them again. Store drop-off recycling was ranked as the most environmentally friendly, with non-recyclable packaging following closely behind. I mean, look at that before and after. It is significant. Compostable paper came next. And finally, compostable plastic, initially perceived as the most environmentally friendly, is now designated as the least environmentally friendly. This experiment demonstrates the significant impact that carbon data has on how we perceive environmental friendliness. When presented with the carbon emission differences, participants made significantly different decisions about the environmental impact of wrappers. And this reflects how many product design decisions are made today, as reducing carbon emissions is a priority for many companies. However, lower carbon emissions don't always favor materials that are returnable, recyclable, or compostable. We asked the participants what they considered more important: carbon emissions or ocean plastics. The majority chose carbon emissions. Carbon is a powerful metric. Comparing carbon emissions of components is a common decision-making process in product development. When we represent carbon emissions of 3 meal bars as circles that grow larger as to reflect their carbon emissions, the differences appear to be on a planetary scale. There's a clear distinction between a smaller footprint and a much larger one. And it's easy to make a decision here if carbon emissions is the measuring stick. And this is not a new finding. Many scientists have published studies showing that recyclable and compostable packaging options often have higher environmental impacts compared to traditional polymers. However, when you place the carbon emissions of the meal bar, the food itself, into this comparison, we have to zoom out to fit everything on the same screen. And suddenly, the differences between those packaging options don't seem as significant. And this prompts us to question whether carbon emission differences between these package designs are practically meaningful. Perhaps we should focus more on the features and the benefits these packaging options offer, such as ensuring their end of life doesn't lead to a landfill. We asked the participants to rank the 7 different environmental impact metrics that we measured for each meal bar wrapper in this experiment, and that included carbon emissions. The participants ranked carbon emissions only in the middle of the 7 options. So, when presented with alternative perspectives on measuring environmental friendliness, carbon emissions don't always come out on top. Interestingly, we found 2 metrics that ranked higher than carbon emissions: water quality and human health. These were seen as more significant indicators of environmental friendliness. Yet these metrics are rarely reported or even considered in the product development decision-making process. I want to conclude with this image. These are 2 identical meal bars packaged in a non-recyclable and a compostable wrapper. The blue circles represent the carbon emissions of the meal bar, the food itself, and both are identical. The orange circles represent the carbon emissions of the wrappers. Packaging makes a difference. It can create a bar with lower carbon emissions but is non-recyclable, and a bar with higher carbon emissions but is compostable. So I ask you, which one is best? This dilemma is much larger than meal bars. Brands, designers, industry, even us as consumers have to make this decision across many of the products we select. And I hope you recognize that our current methods for measuring environmental friendliness don't always align with the materials believed to be sustainable. It's time to see packaging for what it truly is, not merely a byproduct, but a powerful tool that reflects our values and impacts our planet's future. Thank you.